got to be Nationwide 90 FM.
Now to the details. We begin with a developing story. Nationwide News understands the police are probing a triple murder in Frasersfield, Rocky Point in Clarendon on tonight. Reports are that about 9:10 p.m., a man, 26-year-old laborer Daniel Henry, got into a dispute with family members. It's understood Henry used a machete to chop his mother, brother, and cousin. All three were hacked to death. Dead are Annette Lindo, a domestic helper and vendor. She was the suspect's mother. Ingrid Keisha Lindo, a vendor. She was the suspect's cousin. And a 32-year-old Linval Henry, a fisherman. He was the suspect's brother. Nationwide News understands the suspect, Daniel Henry, was treated earlier on Thursday for ongoing mental health issues at Lionel Town Clinic in the parish. The Bank of Jamaica BOJ has opted to keep its policy interest rate unchanged at 5.75% as mounting inflation risks linked to Hurricane Melissa weigh against a sharply weakened economic outlook. The decision was taken unanimously by the bank's Monetary Policy Committee at its meetings earlier this week. It was made amid concerns the economic fallout from Melissa will be more severe than initially assessed. Updated estimates indicate that damage to roads, buildings, the power grid, and other critical infrastructure now exceed 40% of gross domestic product, up from an earlier estimate of 30%. The agriculture sector alone suffered losses equivalent to about 50% of 2024 GDP. This has intensified supply disruptions, raising the likelihood of stronger and more persistent price pressures. Against this backdrop, the BOJ signaled that inflation is set to rise sharply in the coming months. Headline inflation stood at 4.4% in November 2025, but is set to breach the bank's 4 to 6% target range by early 2026. This is driven mainly by higher food and energy prices following the hurricane. Core inflation is also set to increase over the next year as second-round effects spread to other goods and services, including housing repairs, restaurant meals, and personal care items. The BOJ says monetary policy cannot directly offset hurricane-related supply shocks, but maintaining the current policy stance is intended to help anchor inflation expectations and limit broader price concerns. Members of the public are being urged to be vigilant when collecting barrels at the wharves this Christmas season. In a video posted on the JCF's social media pages, Commanding Officer for the Newport West Police Station, Superintendent Rochelle McGibbon Scott, warns that criminals are on the prowl.
Please ensure that the persons who are going to be moving your barrel from the wharf to home, these are reputable persons. You see persons within this space, they have on their shirts, and these are association and organization that will transport you from the wharf to your home. Just ensure that when you lock up your vehicle, it is really locked up, and it's not locked up with a window down. And ensure that even if the drivers, they are not doing this, but you ensure that your name and your address, it is not placed in a position that everybody that passes your vehicle can see. Sometimes we'll see them with lot number, even your very cell number will be showing to the public. So ensure that you move those bars around very strategically.
Superintendent McGibbon Scott is encouraging citizens to work in pairs where possible and report any suspicious activity to the police immediately. According to her, simple security measures can help protect property and ensure the safety of everyone who uses the wharves during the holiday season.
Citizens, be reminded that if you see a vehicle comes out of the wharf behind your vehicle and you're going all the way to Westmoreland and you're now in Migrin and this vehicle is still behind you, it's a high possibility that you're being followed. We ask of you, swing off the road to the nearest police station, and then we can do due diligence in terms of just wanting to find out if there's actually a vehicle following you as you go along.
Superintendent Rochelle McGibbon Scott, Commanding Officer for the Newport West Police. The reclassification of marijuana by the U.S. government marks a significant shift that could remove regulatory barriers while bolstering Jamaica's medical cannabis industry. So says State Minister in the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, Delana Sivrite.
Moving cannabis out of Schedule 1 would significantly ease barriers to medical and scientific research and improve, generally, the operating environment for regulated cannabis activity. So for Jamaica, this is potentially significant. We have decriminalized small amounts of ganja and operate a regulated medical, therapeutic, and scientific cannabis regime that's overseen by the Cannabis Licensing Authority. However, the long-standing Schedule 1 status in the U.S. has contributed to persistent banking challenges and very conservative risk assessments by financial institutions, shaped in part by international drug control conventions that are established under the United Nations.
U.S. President Donald Trump signed the executive order on Thursday. It directs the U.S. Attorney General to reclassify cannabis from a Schedule 1 narcotic to a Schedule 3 drug, paving the way for expanded research into its potential medical benefits. Sivrite says the ministry will also be monitoring the development closely.
We are cautiously optimistic the real impact on banking, investment, and certainly research collaboration will depend on how this U.S. decision is implemented and how global financial systems will consequently respond. So Jamaica, certainly through the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce and the Cannabis Licensing Authority, will assess the developments carefully, but a move away from Schedule 1 is clearly a meaningful and really significant step in a particular direction that will bring benefit globally.
Delana Sivrite, State Ministry and the Ministry of Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. Civil society groups remain divided on proposals to decriminalize the law that prohibits consensual sexual activity between minors. Director of Hear the Children's Cry, Nigel Cooper, argues that such a move would damage society's moral fabric.
If there's a stop sign and persons aren't stopping at that stop sign, it doesn't mean that the stop sign is not valid or not needed. And so we use this analogy to say that persons under the age of consent should not be having sex. And we believe if we remove the stop sign, the law is going to get worse. We're on a slope already. So the solution for us is not to remove the stop sign. It is to look at other ways to let persons recognize and appreciate the stop sign is there, and the stop sign makes good sense. To remove it, it's a slippery slope, and all you're doing is creating more issues.
Children's advocate Diane Gordon Harrison proposed the decriminalization of consensual sexual activity between children earlier this year. Human rights lobby group Jamaicans for Justice is in support of the proposal, but Cooper maintains such a move would be the wrong course of action.
We are not spending enough on the social side programs. So what is happening is that our society, the moral compass, is decaying rapidly, and this has been happening for decades, and no government is spending the resources to move back the needle in the right direction. Who wants to live in a society where everything is loose? I don't think any well-thinking Jamaican wants that. So we need to move the dial back in the right moral compass, and removing the stop sign and this matter is moving the dial in the wrong way, in the opinion of Hear the Children's Cry.
Nigel Cooper, Director of Hear the Children's Cry, he was speaking on Nationwide at 5 on Thursday. Meanwhile, Jamaicans for Justice has rejected the suggestion that decriminalization would encourage children to engage in sexual activity. JFJ's Policy Research and Advocacy Manager, Jade Williams, says the existing provision has not served as a deterrent to children having sex.
What comes with criminalization is also stigmatization and a lack of communication. What we are seeing with the provision in place right now is we're seeing higher rates of children being caught up in the provision, and we are also seeing higher rates of STIs and not lower rates of teenage pregnancy. So I would argue that for that deterrent effect, the provision is not working, and what it is doing is allowing children who are having these activities to fall under the radar and not receive that support that they need, unless it is they happen to be caught, and then the support that they receive is focused solely on the quote-unquote offender, which is usually the boy child, that ends up before the court.
Williams argues that in some instances, child justice principles should take precedence over personal morality. She further contends that the law is not in the best interest of children, noting it disproportionately affects and further marginalizes those who are already vulnerable.
We don't ignore the fact that there is a challenge with children having sex, but we also reasonably acknowledge that what we are doing now to remedy that issue is not working and is in fact increasing their vulnerability. So we want to see that increased comprehensive sexuality education. We want to see increased HSLE programs throughout our schools. We want parents to, of course, receive that additional support to ensure that they are able to guide their children in the right direction. What we don't think is that additionally criminalizing the child will assist with that process.
Jade Williams, Policy Research and Advocacy Manager at JFJ. She was speaking on Nationwide at 5 on Thursday. The Mayor of Kingston, Andrew Swaby, is taking issue with the government's proposed One Road Authority and the prohibition of a sized permit system entertainment events. The mayor told a recent meeting of the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation that he's peeved by the lack of consultation around the proposals.
We are not opposed to reform. We're opposed to reform without consultation. That is why municipal corporations are calling for nationwide municipal engagement before any step is taken. This should include formal dialogue with all corporations, technical workshop with our roads and work department, public forums across parishes, and a full assessment. Any policy that reshapes local governance must be built on transparency, evidence, and the principle of decentralization. We stand ready to work with the government, but we also stand firm in defending the integrity of local government.
The proposed One Road Authority would create a single regulatory framework to govern all roads. It intends to establish uniform construction and maintenance standards to ensure consistent quality across parishes and contractors. The single authority is also intended to improve planning through accurate road mapping using geographic information system and other methods to track road age, construction method, and expected lifespan. Among its goals is the elimination of duplication and accelerate project delivery, enabling better budgeting, scheduling, and maintenance planning. Works Minister Robert Morgan indicated last month that the government plans to engage stakeholders on this proposed authority. The government has also announced a possible reintroduction of a centralized permit system for entertainment events. This would be done in an effort to enable promoters to submit a single centralized application from which they will be directed to the relevant regulatory authorities. But Mayor Swaby is questioning what local government authorities would be left to preside over if both proposed initiatives materialize.
The shift of a single central authority of roads and national permit system for entertainment will remove two of our core functions. If roads and events regulation are taken away, what remains with the local government? These proposals reduce accountability, distant decision making from communities, and weaken the voice of local authority who best understand the local needs.
Andrew Swaby, Kingston's mayor. The Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, has received $50 million worth of construction materials to boost the repair of houses damaged by Hurricane Melissa. The materials were handed over on Thursday. Speaking at the handing over event in Portmore St. Catherine, Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness says the most vulnerable are in dire need of homes.
Policy of the government as it relates to the restoration of roofs and buildings and residences, it's clear and it is strategic. First, we want to assist persons who are vulnerable. You also want to assist persons whose homes were totally damaged and they would need a structure rebuilt. Persons who are in shelters, that they may have a place but the physical structure is damaged. So we want to focus on those.
The donation was made by a real estate development company, Chemtech Development and Construction Limited. The materials will be used for the reconstruction and repair of houses in Westmoreland, St. Elizabeth, and St. James. Dr. Holness is calling on other realtors to step forward in support of the national rebuilding effort.
I will take the opportunity to throw out a challenge to other corporate entities to match or better Chemtech's donations to the recovery. It is in everyone's interest that Jamaica recovers quickly. It is in everyone's interest that the economy is back up and running quickly. It's in everyone's interest that we use this disaster as an opportunity to grow. Make no mistake, the donations here will be used in a way that will support the most vulnerable, the most needy in the country.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister says the Ministry of Labour and Social Security will work to ensure that those facing the most dire need for shelter are prioritized.
Everyone, regardless of how they are recommended, all go through a standard process of assessment. There will be no benefit given to anyone unless they have been assessed by the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. That is very important for accountability because, number one, we need to ensure that the people who get the benefit actually needed the benefit. So they were put through a standardized process of interviewing and actually observing and recording what the damage was.
The Prime Minister says the assessments will also prevent unscrupulous persons from receiving more than they applied for.
Because there are multiple channels of assistance, you could find one person getting the benefit over and over and over again. That is not good. So you have to have a system in place to ensure that if someone already got a benefit, they can't get a benefit again. Give someone else an opportunity. And you can only do that if you have a register of all the persons who need benefits and the people who are getting the benefit are properly identified.
Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness. An item of regional news now. Venezuela has issued another direct warning to Trinidad and Tobago, suggesting it would respond if its territory or people were harmed in the escalating military tension with the United States. The latest warning comes from Interior, Justice and Peace Minister Diosdado Cabello. It follows news that TNT has authorized U.S. military aircraft to transit through local airports as it continues military buildup in the region. Speaking on his weekly Wednesday night TV program, Cabello said, quote, "If something happens to us here in Venezuela, you know what's going to happen." End quote. Cabello said his threat was not directed at the people of TNT. He instead referenced the country's Prime Minister, Kamla Persad-Bissessar. Further afield, European Union leaders have struck a deal to give Ukraine a €90 billion loan after failing to agree on using frozen Russian assets. The frozen funds are valued at around €200 billion. Belgium, where most of Moscow's